I'd like to recognize Mr. Miller for any closing remarks.
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, Mr. Chairman, let me thank you for assembling this panel. I think it's been a remarkable morning. And I think, given their varied backgrounds in the districts and the levels at which they operate in our educational system, they have really described where I think we would like to end up in the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind, and where I think new teachers would like to go to work. Because the districts that you're administering, the schools that you're administering, start to begin to sound like the modern workplaces that their friends go to work in, and not something that is stuck in the past, of workplace that is stuck in the past. I think it also recognizes that school districts are a very different place than they were 10 years ago when we did No Child Left Behind, and they were a very different place when we did No Child Left Behind for whatever preceded it on the SEA. And what I also think I'm hearing from this panel, and you can respond to that in writing if I didn't hear it right, but is the idea that the stakeholders are greater than we've traditionally thought about in schools. It's no longer just the principal or the teacher. It's no longer just the school board. Dr. Stickler, you mentioned in your opening statement about a collaborative process that goes through with these stakeholders. And a number of you have mentioned the question of the involvement in the community, whether it's the academy or it's the process of meeting with the community, is getting a lot of attention, because I think a lot of people are asking the same question: what return am I getting for sending my kid to this school and paying my taxes to support this school? I think the most dramatic example of that is in California, and I think being adopted in some other states. I don't think it's the best necessarily, but I think it's indicative of how we have to pay attention, and that is the parent trigger. That there are parents who just say, wait a minute, this school's been failing for year after year after year after year. I happen to live here, I need to live here, I want a better school. And I'm not gonna, and that's viewed as some people believe that's a warning shot in combat. No, it's not, it's a cry for help. And hopefully a cry to be involved in how that is designed. Ms. Woolsey raised the question about wraparound services. Many of the members, certainly on this side of the aisle, are very concerned about that. And when I look at districts now, and Mr. Carvalho, you sort of suggested this, but in my discussions with Oakland School District in California with Tony Smith, the partnerships that you'll have to create to keep this district viable and responsive to your constituents, the students, are numerous. And what we're working our way through is to try to figure out how you can look, again, I want this money spent on the poor children, but we understand, that in many instances Title I becomes a block grant with the high proportion of students in that school. But the idea of being able to repurpose the spending of Title II money and Title III money, as you pointed out with the English learners, to think about how do we repurpose the SES money? What can schools do with that? It starts to give you the opportunity to really think about working within existing resources. And I say that simply because those are the economic conditions that we're in at this time. But I can't. I'm not going to sacrifice. I'm not going to be part of the first generation to sacrifice our children to a recession. So we have to rethink about how we do this, so you can use your best judgment on how to cobble that. But my sense of flexibility is based upon the idea that we do have these high standards, and that we maintain this high bar, Ms. Scandera, that you kept talking about. That we went through, out of the last 10 years, we've gone through about 8 years where people just pounded on it and said, but for that one kid with disabilities, or but for those English learners, we would be an all-star school. I got news for you. They weren't before, and there wasn't a lot of likelihood. There are some specific cases, but this has become almost urban legend. And while we're saying we don't want to accept one size fits all, we don't want to give up on one expectation for all. And playground English isn't good enough if you really want those English learners to participate in this democracy and this economy. And we can't lose sight of that. And we've struggled, and I mean struggled, because we know the problems presented by students with disabilities. We also know, we see again, school districts that are doing remarkable work with this. We see the fastest acceleration in Massachusetts is among students with disabilities on a very rigorous exam. They're not all going to get there. but we can't trade that in. And I really appreciate you talking about maintaining that high bar and that access to that opportunity at that high bar, because if that's there, then I think the options for us are greatly expanded in terms of really having you administer the outcomes. So thank you very, very much for your spending this time with us this morning.